Hello and welcome aboard the new Boeing 787. On board, the flight stewards include Marc, Sitong, Loai, Simon, Mohammad, and Monchipa. Today's round flights will include destinations to a briefly introductions and background wisdom overview of the strategic problem faced by Boeing with Loai. Nan and Elder will show you the supply chain issues and the strategic and operational choice factors influencing supply chain configuration and strategic decisions. Simon will guide you assess the response, Boeing including the immediately reactions and long-time change. Finally, Marc write our blog post and will give us a conclusion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, please fasten your seatbelt and enjoy the ride. The Boeing 787 Dreamliner has been decided to provide passengers a better flying experience and operators with a more effective commercial jet line. Dreamliner used 20% less fuel per passengers than similar size airplane, and it is more environment friendly with lower emissions and quicker takeoffs and landings. In order to achieve this performance, Boeing established a core team of the world's most capable companies, work with its partners, and has also adopted a completed new manufacturing model to produce the airplane. After a delivery and product delayed, a battery overheat and start a fire in an empty 787. Another report also points the same problem. Then the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board opened a safety probe. Boeing blamed the problem on outsourcing and the lack of the oversight.
So moving on to the overview of the strategic problem faced by the organization. The strategic problem faced by Boeing was relatively high costs and slow product development cycles in comparison to their main competitor Airbus. Due to these issues, Airbus has been receiving a higher number of orders year on year since the 2008 economic crisis, where the demand for airplane orders decreased for both companies. Yet Boeing was affected to a greater extent, as shown on the graph. Since then, Boeing has lost the lead in receiving the higher number of airplane orders in the industry, which is a problem that persists until today. The strategic challenges faced were facilitated and made more prevalent by the deregulation of the USA airline industry, which increased competition massively at home and abroad. This market change was also accompanied by increasing customer, whom are passengers, demand for flying, which was forecasted to have a long-term increase by Boeing in 2008. And indeed, a 5% increase in passenger traffic was recorded between 2011 and 2013 solely, and is a trend that is expected to continue. An additional factor Boeing had to adapt to is low costs. These factors created a situation where Boeing's prices and product cycle time were uncompetitive. Therefore, Boeing was faced with two options: either reduce costs and selling price, or differentiate itself in the market by adding value to customers. Boeing chose the latter and developed the 787, utilizing an unconventional supply chain which reduced development costs from $10 to $6 billion, fuel efficiency by 20%, keeping in mind that fuel costs account for 30% of the global airline operating costs, and shortened development time from 6 to 4 years, therefore adding value to customers, of whom are both passengers and airlines.
So moving on to the supply chain issues. First of all, Boeing have lack of communication skill and visibility skill, as Boeing didn't provide a skillful top management team who have an ability to handle project management or supply chain management. When this issue combined with the lack of know-how in using Excel stars tools from the supplier, Boeing faced a situation where they didn't know what the change that occurred during manufacturer phase on their supplier, which caused the delay on supply chain. And secondly, Boeing have lack of quality control. So Boeing gives the full control of design and electrical system to their suppliers, but they didn't keep measuring the key performance indicator. So for example, a fire a battery fired on Boeing 787 in Boston. It shows that the company engineer blame on the outsources firm about their poor quality components. And lastly, Boeing also have lack of power to control over the human resource. So as the increasing in the outsourcing skills, it creates the insecure feeling for the employee, which it costs around 25,000 people striked, and the manufacturer have to close for around 2 months, which it caused a delay on the supply chain. Moving on to how wider business, societal, and organization influences strategic choice. According to the PES analysis and Fight Force, the factors that affect airplane industry are, first of all, the price concern, because more and more people are flying and they demand the flying flight to be cheaper. And second of all, they want the better quality in terms of both hardware and software. Therefore, Boeing decided to go with the value-added strategy as they want to differentiate themselves without losing their profit. So this strategy helped them to search for the best components that are worth to be developed. In this case, Boeing wants to reduce some costs and get the best components within the limited of time. So they do because they want to compete with Airbus. So they have done it by outsources company. As one of the results, Boeing get the lighter material in producing the airplane.
Factors influencing the supply chain configuration. Market. Boeing were losing market share and needed a new strategy that would cut costs enough for them to recompete again and gain market share. Development time. Boeing's supply chain must be very time efficient in order for them to stay in competition. Environment. For Boeing to provide fuel efficient aircrafts, the supply chain configuration must allow for technologies to replace certain components in the most flexible manner possible, for example, engines. Social and customer satisfaction. Sacrificing quality and luxury for less cost and time is not an option. Boeing have to be constantly aware of breakthroughs in materials in order to develop light, fuel-efficient aircrafts that are comfortable and luxurious as customers expect. Strategic and operational choices made by Boeing. Boeing's decision to move to such an unconventional supply chain configuration was an excellent strategy in theory, as it will allow them to spread risks over nearly 50 strategic partners, risks as in labor risks, management, financial, etc., as well as cutting costs by almost $4 billion and time by 2 years. Boeing should have assembled a more supply chain experienced team to deal with such a change. Operationally, Boeing's collaboration with Exxon to create a communication tool across all supplier tiers was a very good idea, only if culture and time differences were managed in a better way. The acquisition of the fuselage plant was a necessary measure to avoid further delays and keep quality intact.
Due to the variety of issues that were present, Boeing needed to react quickly and also make some long-term changes. During the development and production cycle of the plane, Boeing had to take a lot of immediate action in order to avoid the aircraft being delayed even more. In order to deal with the labour issues that occurred, Boeing were forced to strike a deal with the union, which involved a 15% pay rise over the following 4 years and a promise to reduce outsourcing in order to improve job security. In order to reduce the delay, that the strike had caused, Boeing were also forced to purchase a new plant in order to improve output. Boeing also had to react to their supplier problems. Where suppliers were unable or unwilling to make necessary improvements to facilities, Boeing had to purchase these facilities and make the investments themselves. In some cases, they were also forced to bail out suppliers who were in financial risk and send in staff to help those suppliers that did not have the necessary staff to complete their tasks. In order to mitigate the damage done to their customer relationships, Boeing also had to issue replacement aircraft to those customers and also had to create a website to update them on the progress of the 787. These immediate reactions appeared to be effective, however, were often costly. Due to the time constraints, these were the only options available, but if this had not been an issue, Boeing could have looked at alternative methods. These alternative methods could have been replacing the suppliers that were causing the problems so that they would not have had to make such high cash investments themselves. Boeing also appear to have learned their lesson from the issues that they faced and have made some long-term changes to their supply chain management in order to address this. They have vowed to not carry out extensive outsourcing again unless they can improve the control over it. They also intend to increase visibility for themselves and their suppliers in their supply chain through improved information exchange. This visibility should help enable them to solve minor issues as and when they come up, which should result in an improvement in quality and speed of production. Combining this with improved quality management and training should allow for a better quality product development cycle. The company also intend to spend more time on supplier selection in order to ensure that suppliers are up to the task that they are set. As well as this, they intend to take part of the selection process of Tier 2 and 3 suppliers, so that they have some control of the supply process of their primary suppliers. The company has employed more supply chain specialists and engineers in order to improve on their issues. These new staff members will analyse the current suppliers and offer assistance on the issues that these suppliers face in order to ensure that there is better supply chain efficiency. These actions show that Boeing are taking positive steps and utilising the lessons that they have learned. These actions will actually help improve the supply chain of the company as a whole and not just the 787 supply chain, meaning that the whole company should benefit. These actions are an ongoing process, however they already appear to be making an impact as Boeing appear to be back on track and they have plans to increase their production.
Now we are beginning our descent into Washington International Airport. Please make sure you are seated and your seat belts are tightly fastened. We have now arrived at our final destination, Washington, where the main Boeing manufacturing plant is located. Thank you for staying in your seats for the duration of the flight. We hope you enjoyed your ride. Please notify any of our cabin crew if you have any questions.